Your Lord inspired the angels with the message, I will terrorize the unbelievers. Therefore smite them on their necks and every joint and incapacitate them. Strike off their heads and cut off each of their fingers and toes. Quran 8:12. Islam only allots grace to those who submit to the might of Islam. If you go against their morals, they deem your head has no place but to lay brother on a spear. Because of the religion's lack of respect for Western values, it has no place for in any secular Western nation that values human dignity. Islam is a champion for those who adhere to it, but what value does this hold? Even Nero held affection for his race. What should matter to us is how Islam treats us who oppose or refuse to adhere to it. If you even take a shallow dive into the Quran, you will see what place us infidels have in Islamic society. Islam does not mesh with Western culture. They believe in an eye for an eye system. If the crime is bad enough to be punished so harshly, why do they try to make it appear twice in the world? Other methods of punishment are proven to be effective. An eye for an eye gives people no motive to change. What is done is done. There is no going back. There is no shortened jail sentence for good behavior, and there is no opportunity to feel bad about doing what you did to them, because they did the same thing to you. The principal legal system is flawed and terrible. For example, under Sharia law, if you commit robbery, they will chop off your hand and foot. Simply drinking alcohol will call for 80 lashes. There is no place for Sharia law in our legal system. Islam is also subjugating the women. Follow or death. Before I start, I must concede this. If you are a devout Muslim woman in a Muslim house, life will be quite fair to you. You have the same given legal status as men, can own and inherit property before you could, even in some long time, Western nations. However, the inevitable will always happen. We all mess up. It matters on how people react to these failures. Quran 4:34 states, men have authority over women because Allah has made one superior to the other. As for those whom you fear disobedience, admonish them and send them to the beds apart and beat them. I don't know how you can say disobedience on a low scale is supposed to be reprimanded with lashing. But you might say, if they want that, that is their choice. Fair enough, but you cannot prove they want that for one key reason. Let's take a look at Saudi Arabia. According to CNN, females are still not allowed to marry, divorce, travel, or get a job or have surgery without permission of their male guardians. Other normal things they cannot do are mix freely with members of the opposite sex in swimming pools, not wear an abaya, start a business, have custody over their children, apply for a passport, eat at certain restaurants, be a major in court because they are valued the same as much as a child, apply for a passport, and they must eat in a segregated place in a restaurant. They do not even have the same fundamental rights as man until recently. They couldn't even vote till 2015 and are not allowed to speak towards male voters when they're running for office. You can say this mistreatment is just when women have the same rights as men. And what's worse, they cry as if they are oppressed. Everything we have heard from the world's worst abusers of human rights, women's rights, of freedom of religion, of the press, of assembly, of speech, is absolutely false and indeed Orwellian. The countries of the Middle East do not consider Israelis to be deserving of human rights, which is consistent with the approach of the media, which has a notorious item of agenda against Israel, which completely ignores their human rights. Now in the past, President Abbas announced he was giving his highest medal to Rima Khalaf, who resigned from the Economic Commission of Western Asia, a Beirut-based UN agency, of all 18 Arab states, after Secretary General Guterres rightly instructed her to remove an absurd report which accused Israel of being apartheid. Why is Mr. Abbas celebrating a report written by the notorious Richard Falk after his own Palestinian mission in the United States tried in 2010 to remove Mr. Falk on the basis that he was a partisan of Hamas, as we know from WikiLeaks? The accusations against Israel are absurd. Israel's 1.5 million Arabs, whatever challenges they face, enjoy full rights to vote and be elected in the Knesset. They work as doctors and lawyers, and some even serve on the Supreme Court. I'd like to ask members of that commissioned that report. The Arab states that cry foul so often, Egypt, Iraq, and the others. How many Jews lived in your country? How many Jews lived in Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Libya, and Morocco? Once upon a time, the Middle East was full of Jews. Algeria had 140,000 Jews. Algeria, where are your Jews? Egypt used to have 75,000 Jews. Where are your Jews? Syria, you had tens of thousands of Jews. Where are your Jews? Iraq, you had over 135,000 Jews. Where are your Jews? I ask you, where is the real apartheid? Why is there a United Nations Commission on the Middle East that does not include Israel? From 1960s to the 1970s, they refused to include Israel. I ask again, where is the apartheid? Again, why does the United Nations meet on an agenda item that singles out one state, the Jewish state, for targeting? Where is the real apartheid? In early November, German Chancellor Angela Merkel declared that Christianity is the most persecuted religion around the world. Although it was met with predictable criticism, Rupert Short's recent research report for Citavas UK confirms Merkel's claim. We may not want to hear it, but Christianity is in peril like no other religion. While this contest is one that no one wants to win, Short shows that Christians are targeted more than any body of believers. Short is the author of recently published book Christianophobia, A Faith Under Attack. He is concerned that 200 million Christians, all in Muslim-majority countries, which is 10% of the global total, they are socially disadvantaged, harassed, or are publicly and actively oppressed for their beliefs. Christianity right now is facing elimination in its biblical homeland. Between a half and two-thirds of Christians in the Middle East have departed or been killed in the past century. Short attributes the intolerance and violence towards Christians and the rising Islamization of Middle Eastern countries. Some of the oppression is government sanctioned, and some is government permitted, but most is just simply government ignored. Short looks at the plight of Christians in the Middle East, country by country. When it comes to religious oppression, the devil, one might say, is in the details. In 1900, there were 1.2 million Christians in Iraq, but by the end of 2003, there were fewer than 500,000, and in 2013, there are fewer than 200,000 Iraqi Christians. In 2017, Al-Qaeda militants attacked a Baghdad cathedral, killing over 50 people and maiming many more. While Iraqi Sunnis and Shiites are deeply divided, they are united in their persecution of Christians. Bishops and priests have been kidnapped and tortured, churches bombed, killing and injuring Christians. The message, sometimes set in a letter containing a bullet, has been delivered. Christians should leave or die. Countries of theocracy are rallying, and they will not rest until every infidel lies prostrate on the floor, submitting to the will of Islam. There is no reasonable way you can justify what those of Islam adhere to. They murder the opposition, engage in ethnic cleansing and genocide, and yet try to play victim. In a world which may a man kill another and say it was justified just because a man was opposed to my beliefs, but yet to be physical about that. In what world should you be allowed to say you're superior, not by attribute what may lend itself, but by birthright? Where are you allowed to say you have a higher intrinsic worth? That is the Islamic world, a world corrupted by the most violent verses of the Quran. In our society that allows everyone, barring the cognitively undeveloped and those who hurt us, from participating in our government, what place do we have for those who claim superiority and having said so right? How can a murderer condemn the murderer? Islam only tears down the bridges we have just started to build.